Welcome to the Personal Success Podcast. Today, I sit down with Nancy Lynn Griffin for a conversation about leadership, worth, wealth, and the deeper question of what it means to step forward with courage. Nancy's mission is clear: more women leaders in the world. But this conversation goes far beyond money or titles. We explore why so many women still hesitate to put themselves front and center, how self-worth quietly shapes confidence and decision-making, and why leadership is not about controlling everything. It's about helping other people rise. Nancy shares her experience that led her into wealth management, what she has learned from decades of supporting women in financial independence and legacy creation, and why health, wealth, and worth cannot be separated. We also talk about the deeper cultural forces that keep many women cautious, the kind of boldness the world needs now, and what it looks like to lead in a way that creates a better future for everyone. This is a conversation about stepping up without apology, about becoming more of who you were always meant to be, and about using your life, your voice, and your resources in a way that truly matters. If you've ever wrestled with worth, leadership, or the tension between staying safe and stepping forward, this episode will meet you there. Nancy Lynn Griffin, thank you so much for joining us on the Personal Success Podcast.
You're welcome, Ryan. It is my pleasure.
Just to get us oriented, who is Nancy Griffin and what is her mission?
Well, what's my mission? I'll tell you what my mission is. My mission is to have more women leaders in the world.
That's a powerful mission.
It is.
I love that it was sort of like, you're like, oh, well, what is my mission? Very simply, here's what it is. I know what it is. It's so obvious. It's almost like I got the idea that it was like the wallpaper. I was like, what color is the wallpaper in my bathroom? You don't know, but it was like, oh, it's just, this is obvious. You've lived it for quite a while here. And Nancy, since 1994, you've worked with women to support financial independence, personal wellness, and meaningful legacy creation in your program, which is called Women, Worth, and Wealth. So Nancy, in your own life, what made health, wealth, and self-worth feel sort of inseparable to you?
Well, I guess it was always there. It just isn't anything that I work to bring forward. And I think a lot of bringing the forward means that you've evolved over time and you've developed a whole level of confidence that you are worthy of doing that. In my 20s, I never would have done something like this because it would be considered to be too bold, way too bold. Like, who the heck does she think she is? On the other hand, it would have been great if I had done that. But as happens with all of us, we evolve over time. We have all sorts of different experiences and opportunities. And I think we just become more of who we were always supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And that's that's a theme that I've discovered is that, we become more of who we're meant to be.
Right.
And so I guess this sort of begs the question, Nancy, what were some of your experiences that led you to this path that you're on?
Well, interesting. A couple of times, and this is one of my learnings that I'll very, very quickly share. I was headed in one direction. And then as part of that direction, to confirm that it was the right direction, I consulted with somebody that I just met, at which point in time that person listens to who I am and what I'm up to very carefully and says, I'm not sure that that's the best idea. What about blah, blah? And that's exactly how I got into wealth management. I was headed in one direction. Met this woman who had just been given a whole big package. She was a VP of a big company in Canada. Went to get some advice on how to put this all together. Was really, really disappointed that the advice and service wasn't a whole lot better. And that's when she decided to go into wealth management and then recruited me. So here I am 180 degrees going in another direction that I had not planned on in the least. But it's interesting because once I got there, I should have been there 20 years earlier. The learning that I had was that you pay attention and respect what other people think you should do.
That is some unique advice, I think. I think a lot of times there's a sort of self-improvement trope or something like that. That's like, don't listen to anybody else. Listen to, your passion or something like that. And I think, this kind of came up in a conversation I was having yesterday is that people outside of us, they can see us in a way that we can't see ourselves. Right. And it seems like you were able to sort of access that and you were able to like you said, do a complete 180 and head in a different direction. So what was the instinct? Yeah, go ahead.
I was on a panel recently on a business called Grow Your Biz for women business owners. And one of the questions the moderator asked, and thank goodness that there were 4 of us, that they asked the person on my right first, so it gave me time to think. But they said, "What's your definition of success?" Well, that's a pretty simple question. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And then I thought, you know what? You give more than you take. Really, that's the thing that I love to do the most. But the reason I mention this is that woman who redirected me 180 degrees, that's what she was doing. She was paying attention to me, who I was, what I was trying to accomplish, where I was headed, and then gave her best advice. And Ryan, I can tell you the same thing happened again this year when I got into this pod pitch business. Because again, this was a woman that I met in Toronto who moved to Miami. And out of the blue, she gets in touch with me probably about 6 months ago and said, "Nancy, you've got to get into this pod pitch business. And here's the group, here's the contact." And of course, it's a whole new world, a whole new world. So in both instances, those women paid attention to me and what I was reaching for and gave me their best and 180 degrees, and it's made a world of difference.
What do you think that she saw in you that caused her to steer a different way?
Well, I think she and I had similarities in that we both had been in a corporate environment and we had risen to a certain level, but we weren't going any further. So it's kind of like, okay, you've come to the end of a road. Now what are you going to do? And she had been able to get on to her next. So therefore, she was very empathetic, understanding of where I was coming from and possibly where I was headed, to the point where she could comment on. And once I got into wealth management, I should have been there 20 years earlier. I mean, really, it's really interesting. And in retrospect, had I not gone into wealth management, what the heck would I have been doing? Nobody knows.
That's an interesting way to think about that, for sure. You've been working with women for this time, and I wonder, I can see some things that have changed, but in the 30 years that you've been sort of doing this work, what actually hasn't changed?
Women still are cautious. Women still don't want to put themselves front and center. The worst thing that a woman can do is try to step ahead of the crowd, because they know other women will say, "Who the heck does she think she is?" So women are still cautious about being selfish. On the other hand, a big part of my message is women want to help everybody else. Women want to do the right thing. Women very, very seldom put themselves first because they never want to be classified or identified as somebody who is really selfish.
Yeah, I'm confounded. Why isn't there more women leaders? I've had some great leaders I've followed who have been women. I think there's this sort of cultural belief that like leadership is like a general standing on a hill going, "Charge," That was what I thought when I sort of got into the corporate world, right? And so, I was really good at yelling "charge," and let me tell you, Nancy, it didn't do any good. What I had to do, and what really the work of being a leader is everything that leads up to being on that hill. It is building the relationships. Really, it was a lot about relationships. I had to soften a little bit as be open to hearing what somebody had to say, even if I disagreed with it, to sort of be able to connect with them. And I think, I don't know, there's something that I realized in leadership that I think that women just have a natural, the gravity sort of pulls them there. And it just seems like, in a way of thinking, in the modern world, it seems like that women in a lot of ways are better equipped to be our leaders. I don't know. What am I seeing there?
No, I agree. And I think being a leader is a perfect role for women if they understand the best part of being a leader. I think the best part of being a leader is focusing on helping other people become leaders. So if you're leading a whole group of people, okay, so you're front and center, you've got the final say. What you need to do is focus on all those people that are reporting to you and ones that are reporting to them, and think about those individuals and how you can help them enhance their leadership so that they can do a more powerful job and be a more powerful role model to the ones that are following them. But I think you're right. Leaders think they've got to be the boss of everything, when in fact, the last thing that you want to be is the boss of everything. You just simply want to be a catalyst in creating other leaders.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like the name of your program, Women, Worth, and Wellness, it's very intentional. Which one of those words do you think that women struggle with the most?
Worth. On a lot of these podcasts, we've come back to the whole notion of worthy. You are worthy. It's kind of what I started with, which is women don't ever want to be seen as being selfish, when in fact you should be selfish. You should look after yourself as your number one asset as it pertains to your health and your wealth. Because when you do, when you get your own whole situation in order, you become more confident, more joyful, and more able to really champion others. And so again, I think the worth is worthy, and it just equals being selfish. You're not selfish. You're worthy. You are absolutely worthy. You're worthy of working with the best advisors you can find, best wealth advisor, best health advisor. And again, I encourage people to have those trusted relationships, because I think even dentists don't do their own dental work. Like, don't try to do it all yourself. Those relationships with professional advisors really, really make a difference.
There is this paradox. Nancy, I'm a coach. I work one-on-one with people to sort of, help them experience fulfillment and success in their lives and whatnot. And one of the things that is very paradoxical, and it was for me when I sort of entered this space, is that a lot of times what your career needs, what your relationships need, what your finances need is you to take care of yourself first. And I always, don't be selfish, be self-full. That was a way to kind of twist that word. And I feel like that's sort of what you're saying here, is there's sort of something inherent with the women that you're working with. They don't feel this sense of worth. And if they do put themselves first, a lot of times all the things that, it's kind of like I said, it's a paradox. The reason why they don't do that ends up kind of erasing the reason why they do that, if you will. I don't know if I said that backwards or not, but I think many women too, they feel successful on paper, but sort of under-resourced sort of internally. Where do you see self-worth kind of quietly leaking away for some of these women?
I think just not owning your own existence. Like, if you start to own yourself and you start to think about investing in yourself, then that creates a whole different mindset.
I want to share something personal with you. I worked with Steve Lang and his Aura AI agency. That's AURA. That experience gave me a level of clarity I didn't realize I was missing. Steve has an ability to listen and reflect back what's actually there in a way that helps you see yourself clearly. What's changed most is my ability to speak about what I do with confidence and precision. If you're someone who knows you have something meaningful to offer, but you're not sure how to fully articulate it, I highly recommend working with Steve and Aura. It's been one of the most valuable investments I've made myself and my work. To learn more about Steve and his work, visit him on linkedin.com/Steve Lang, Aura AI Agency. That's linkedin.com/in/Steve Lang, Aura, AURA, AI Agency. The link is in the show notes.
I started out adding on health as the number one priority to wealth when I realized that women's health is often compromised because they're focused on everybody else. And so that's when I used to partner with a lot of not-for-profit health-related organizations focusing on women's health, so that women's awareness of all the different bits and pieces about being well, being healthy, would come to their attention, and also they would now have resources to approach. Google doesn't answer all the questions, and good luck getting through to your doctor with a quick question. And so when I hosted these events, I would charge a nominal amount, $25 or $50. So that starts to introduce how giving enhances your net worth. That donation is a charitable deduction. But then, of course, in giving, more often than not, it enhances your self-worth, because the person who is giving the gift is not in line asking for something, they're giving something. And so here we are 30 plus years later, that charitable giving has turned into a huge, huge power opportunity for women, because women are now earning a whole lot more. But equally important, they're starting to inherit with a whole lot more to come. So their power trip is stewarding this wealth. And are they really able to step up to this new power opportunity and focus on it very carefully? Because now you have to be extremely discerning. What am I going to do with all these dollars, and to whom do I want to direct them? And how well do I know that organization? Because the last thing that you want to do after you've done some deep thought about philanthropy is to give it to an organization and then have a surprise a few months later that there's some fraudulent activity or, they're not as good as they appear to be. And so now there's a whole, now the aspirations that women would have had 30 years ago are now coming into play. And I guess my key question, are women truly ready to step up to this incredible opportunity?
So I can hear, Nancy, in your work that you hold events and you have their speaking engagements and things like that. What else are you doing to actively sort of go after this mission of creating more female leaders?
Well, that's a pretty powerful question because that's what I'm working on getting to next. Because in Canada, we have a group called the Famous Five, and the Famous Five in 1929 had women declared as persons, and that had to go through the UK for us to be declared as persons. So 2029 will be the 100th anniversary. And these five women in their day did something immensely important and significant. My mission now is, in our midst, there are women like the Famous Five who could step up and do amazing things to make the world a better place. And so what I'm hoping to do is to find a way to inspire more women to step up and step out and step into their unique ability to make that kind of difference that the Famous Five did almost 100 years ago. One in particular, she's got a fabulous, this quote I share frequently. It is never retreat, never explain, never apologize, get the job done and let them howl. Well, how many women do you know today who've got that kind of moxie that they're prepared to really put themselves out and charge ahead?
Yeah. Exactly. I know. And it's funny to think that as I hear you say that, there's a horror that sort of came up and I was like, oh my gosh, that's 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Where women are considered, what was the term you used? People?
Persons.
That's just blows my mind. I'm like, did she say, person? Yeah. But personhood, I mean, that's like 100 years ago is just not that long ago.
Right. And women couldn't vote. Yeah, they couldn't vote. If you weren't a person, you couldn't vote. But the person who I really admire too, of course, but one in particular is Melinda French Gates. Like, we know what her life was and we know what her life is and we know what caused her to be doing what she's doing. But she is really investing in really important things. Obviously, she's got lots of wealth to do that, but she's doing it. She didn't have to do it public. So she's very much a role model. Same thing with Mackenzie Scott. And, I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard that Elon Musk requested that she stop investing in all those women's organizations. And then she said, fine, I'll just double my contributions. Like, that's what we need is more women because the world needs more women in leadership roles. We saw that family photo in Egypt, a month or so, 2 months ago. I think there was one female leader, and that's the Prime Minister of Italy or President of Italy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know, like, my relationship to leadership, my personal, I was the oldest of 6 boys. It was just everything was, it was like you had to be a leader, whether I wanted to or not. It was something that you had to do. I wonder, what does it look like for, I'm not saying that was successful either. I guess my point is that there's sort of, as a man, you're sort of inherently expected to be a leader.
Right. Yeah.
There's sort of a gap there between that and women. What attracts women to this idea of leadership?
Well, I would think if you asked any woman if she'd like to be a leader, I would find it surprising if very few said no, because I think every woman in her own world would love to be a leader. It's just that perhaps they don't know how or they don't know where, and they certainly don't want to have any criticism. Like they don't want to stick their neck out and have people criticizing them. But at the same time, I think, for example, one wealth advisor used to sponsor a lot of my events. And during COVID, I read in the New York Times that there were different YOLO events happening because, of course, people were thinking more about death. So I said, well, let's do a YOLO event and we'll invite 4 women leaders to take 10 minutes and share their YOLO. And the key to success was they weren't interviewed. And I said, what woman would not mind having 10 minutes uninterrupted to talk to an audience?
Yeah.
We ended up doing 5 of them because The women in the first group, I think there were about 45 there, afterwards said, Nancy, if you're doing this again, I'd love to be one of the speakers. And so we just kept it going, and we found out things about people that if you had interviewed them and directed the conversation, I don't think we would have found out what we did find out. It's like, take 10 minutes and tell us who you are.
Yeah.
So and great stories came, really great stories. And so I think if you asked any woman to tell us their YOLO, and especially as it pertains with some smattering of flavoring or icing about leadership, they'd have some interesting things to share with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I can certainly imagine. And I just wonder how many of those stories are out there that could inspire someone that people are sort of keeping them to themselves, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, I wonder, is there any kind of unique beliefs about success or money that belong to sort of women as a general group? I know we're sort of talking about women here, and I want to keep the focus over here, but anything that would stand out that's significantly different than just kind of a general belief about money or success?
Well, normally women defer to somebody else because they assume that that other person knows more than they do. Now, that's a very, very, very general statement. Not every woman falls into that category by any means. And if some of the women I know heard me saying that, they'd say, Nancy, what are you talking about? That is not true in my reality. But I think it is true in a lot of people's realities, a lot of women's realities. And so the more you can know that you're worthy and know that you've got a right to invest in yourself and work to be the best that you can be, the more likely you are to step out and step up.
Yeah. I wonder, like, what is it that you mentioned earlier that there's the word worth, right, is what you see women struggle with the most. And I wonder, for women, where does it come from? But what causes it to be sort of the thing that they struggle with? Is it a realization that I don't know. I just wonder about what that comes from, specifically, again, for women, this like lack of worth. Because certainly men, and as a man, I could see worth being an issue too. But specifically, what is it about women? Is there something about the socialization? Because I know if you look at like a lot of psychology, there is kind of, they say like when you hit teenage age, you've got the girls are fighting with words and the boys are fighting with fists, right?
Right.
Is that related to any of this, you think?
Well, we know what's happening today in society because a lot of women are really rising up, younger women, really, really reaching for the top and succeeding, especially in universities. And a lot of that starts to become intimidating to men. So things are starting to reverse in some way. So now it's kind of like, well, you've gone a little bit too far. Did you really need to be that aggressive? Did you really need to have been that determined? And so, recently I thought, well, this is a leadership opportunity for women. Like if you are that far ahead, why don't you circle back and help? Like realize what the effect is on young men. This one woman said, Nancy, are you out of your mind? Let them struggle along and figure things out the same way we had to. Well, that was kind of an unkind comment, I thought, and certainly not one.
Said that to you? That kind of blows my mind. Somebody said that to you?
Yes, definitely. And she's a AAA one. She's traveled the world giving talks on gender diversity and the importance and blah, blah, blah. It's almost like, well, we struggled so they could struggle. Well, I'm not sure that attitude makes the world a better place. What we would have hoped for is that men would have understood what we were trying to accomplish and have been more supportive and championing of us achieving that equality. So anyway, nothing is ever perfect, as we know. We can only work hard to try to make it perfect.
Yeah, but I wonder if there's, I think what I understand with the psychology, and this is probably a very unpopular sort of position, but it's like almost like women are more judgmental of each other than men are of men.
For sure. Definitely.
In a different way.
Definitely.
And so I wonder what role that plays in this.
Well, a long, long time ago, there was an article in Reader's Digest about the differences between men and women. If I could find that article, it would be really interesting. Because women want to be the prettiest, so the top of the male contingent will choose them. So therefore, women see other women as competition. It's like, no, I want to be at the front. I want to be the prettiest. So that's why you got to deck yourself all out to the best of your ability. And to a certain extent, I think some of those physiological qualities are still in each of us. Perhaps that's why the fashion industry is so much for women, more so than for men. It's like making yourself look the very best you possibly can be. But anyway, it's interesting. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a sociologist. And it's interesting how I've ended up. If you know a great sociologist, I'd love to consult with that person because I think what in the world is going on now is really, really, really interesting because women are trying to rise up. And I think if women did and there was more of an equal balance, the world would be a different place. But they're not there, and there should be more there by now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, one of the things that I find myself concerned with is that these old sort of gender roles that we had from past centuries, I think perhaps there was a time where they served some role in society. And I think they've changed. And I have two little boys who are, not quite 3 yet. And it's like, how do I teach them to just to honor everybody equally, regardless of their
Right.
boy, girl, or whatnot. And that's a difficult thing to do because, especially small children, they are simplifying everything to good, bad, I do this, don't do this. And I can see the human instinct in doing that. And it's kind of like, I like that you said that, let the men struggle along because there is another conversation to be had about what's happening with a lot of men in the world
Exactly.
is that they're struggling. And I hear a lot of that attitude, and I don't know that I have any judgment about it, but I hear the attitude of, well, let them struggle. So-and-so did for whatever group did. But I think you brought it back to the point is that we're trying to make everybody better by
Better world.
focusing on women, and I think that's what I really like about your message here.
Exactly.
So like looking at it from that point of view, what might you give somebody if there's a father listening, what kind of advice can we give our boys about supporting women?
I'll tell you. One Father's Day, I had a bunch of fathers talking about how they help their daughters develop confidence. And then I had one young mother on who's the mother of 3 young sons. And her message was very, very simple. She's a smart cookie. She's done exceptionally well in the business world. And she said, my message to these 3 young sons is no means no. And I go over it and over it and over it several times. No means no. And I'm very insistent. Like I'm not giving any leeway whatsoever. No means no. She said they have absolutely no idea why I am so emphatic. But she said, if I can get that message across and ingrained in their heads, then one day, perhaps when they're with a female in a partnership and no means no, they will respect that response. So I thought that was a really, really, really powerful point that she made. Really
Yeah.
powerful.
And that is something, Nancy, that's really resonating with my life right now. Of course, at this age, we're really, really working on that definition of no, but you're absolutely right that just is learning to respect another person's agency to kind of
Right.
direct their life as they want to. And you're right. It starts right there. And that is probably the last thing that I thought you were going to say there. And I think that is a good thing because I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense right there because that's regardless of what we say to each other, it's the boundaries that we set
Right.
that really communicate who we are.
Correct.
Okay, so we can say all we want to about, I respect all these people, but if you do something that doesn't respect somebody's boundaries or you set boundaries that are whatever, that says who you are more than anything. And I think we all know that sort of instinctually. Maybe we don't have words for it, but that to me, that's what I hear you saying is that understand that people set boundaries and you may not cross them without their permission.
And
I think that is powerful.
for you, as the father of these 3-year-old boys, you don't want to be a mean father. You don't want to be mean. And so sometimes when you're saying no, you're saying to yourself, oh, come on, well, maybe. But if you're operating on 2 levels, that no means no, and this is a really firm learning that you want for their future, then you're not feeling so mean.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Too. It connects to what I'm really trying to do as a father is set them up to and this goes along with your mission too, is I want this world to be a better place, which is in part why I'm doing this work. Right. And I think that is one way to contribute there. So thank you for that answer. That's powerful. So, at what point it's interesting because you talk a lot about legacy too, right? At what point does legacy become meaningful conversation? And I guess what does legacy mean to you in your work?
Well, I've had several conversations on that whole topic, and Actually, at one point, I did have a trademark that was called Passionate Legacy. And of course, I'd go to trade shows and things, and people say, well, tell me a little bit about what does that mean? And I said, it's very simply, what do you want to be when you're gone? And they'd look at me
Yeah.
like, you've got some nerve, lady. And I didn't get
Wow.
the
Yeah.
trademark renewed quickly enough. And so somebody scooped it, which was too bad because
Oh,
it was really
yeah.
powerful. But I'll give you a recent story. I have a friend who was a trustee for a young person. The young person has just turned 18, so he's turning over the responsibility of that portfolio to the 18-year-old. So he is meeting with the 18-year-old and the wealth advisor who's been managing this money all along. So the wealth advisor says to the 18-year-old, I am delighted to continue to work on this with you, but he said, I have two requirements. One is that you have a current will and estate plan. The second is that you have an accountant. So I said, oh my goodness, how powerful is that? Is an 18-year-old thinking about his demise? But if a person gets that message sooner rather than later, life, I think, starts to fall into place in a much different way. Also, if you talk about not just a will, but what's your estate, like who would you like this money to go to? That's another whole process for an 18-year-old to work their way through. Now, granted, they'll probably live to be 98, but their life will be different because that was introduced at a very early stage. I also had a couple of couples, both of whom had enough wealth, but each was concerned that maybe if one passed away, that the other one wouldn't have enough. And so there are all sorts of insurance to deal with all kinds of situations like that. So in both cases, I sold them a life insurance, the first to die. So the first to die, it pays out and it goes to the second one. Well, one conversation, there was a lawyer and a university professor, and they were going on a big cruise. And so we're having a lot of conversation about this. The lawyer still didn't have a will. And we couldn't believe it. I said, finally, I really took him on. I said, you should be ashamed of yourself. Like, you are a sophisticated professional and you don't have a will. Anyway, he agreed to get a will. But then we have the conversation about each of them had different wishes as far as philanthropy was concerned. So then we had to make sure that whoever went first would respect the wishes of the other one, including how they wanted to direct their. It was a crazy conversation, but really, really necessary. And this is what the power of a wealth advisor is. You wedge right into the middle and have the conversation. Whereas in the absence of the wealth advisor being in the middle, imagine those two at home trying to figure it out. They finally would
Yeah,
have said,
right.
oh, the heck with this. We'll deal with it another day. So lots of interesting conversations over time.
Yeah, and there's an interesting theme that's sort of coming up from our conversation here. And it showed up here and it showed up when you were talking about you don't want to be a mean father. Just know that when you're saying that, there's a bigger picture. There's sort of a bigger vision to what you're doing, and it sort of it transcends even just the group of women, right? Just it transcends that particular group to have an impact, for everyone. And I think that there's something for just sort of us, the everyday person, to hear in that is that whatever you're called to sort of really invest yourself in and better, right? And I think that comes from the idea that you said you want to, the big thing is if we're doing things for other people, there's something magical about getting that. But whatever
Correct.
that group is, if you have like the vision being like, you talked about an 18-year-old talking about, his will, and you're like, wow, that's powerful. And like some people might look at that and be like, that's dark. Actually,
Exactly.
he's talking about purpose. He's like,
Right.
my life is going to be about this, to the
Right.
point that I'm planning it for after I'm gone too. So I don't know. I noticed that. I thought I
It's
wonder if
well,
you'd see that too.
Yep. Well, what you're working towards is that bigger reality that you're aware of that the other person may not be aware of or may not want to accept. And so as the professional, you're kind of pushing. Like this wealth advisor said to the 18, I will only work with you on the condition that you get a will and get an accountant. Like he made it very specific. Like in other words, we've got a significant amount of money here. And if the bus runs you over, what am I supposed to do with this money? Like, it's your
Yeah.
money, so let's go through that process. But that's why professionals really need to be, you need to be in and you need to be out. You need to be an excellent listener, but sometimes you really need to charge forward and really challenge the person to get some things in place. The other thing that I had frequently that I would then head off with new clients where you might anticipate it is to get to next before you have to. As people get older, they like to hang on to everything they possibly can rather than, you know what? It is really time to move on. I know I don't have to. And I know maybe the market isn't the best that it could be if you're selling up property. But you know what? Let's get out of Dodge while we're well and get settled into a new location, a new community, whatever, while we're still able. If you leave it too long, that's when not nice things can happen. Hey, I'll give you another example. We had a good friend visiting us this summer, and she goes away most of the winter. And of course, when she's away, the markets go up and down and all over the place. And, her attitude is, should I be worried about this? I don't think I should because I know I'm working with a great guy. But anyway, she said, I've got a Zoom booked with him and I'd really like you to listen in. Okay, happy to. So the conversation starts and, how am I doing? Okay, well, you're doing great. And I'm still going to get my monthly. And then the advisor says, actually, I want you to know this again. I've mentioned it to you before, but I want you to know because we all know that the markets are pretty volatile these days. He said, at any given point in time, I have set aside 3 years worth of monthlies for you. And that's revolving. That's on an ongoing basis. So over the next 3 years, at any given point in time, you're covered with your monthlies. And then he said, I want to take some profits in one of your accounts because some of these have exceeded our benchmarks. And he gave her the specifics of the ones that he was taking profits from, which I thought was really smart. Then he's telling her what he wants to reinvest some of those proceeds into, and again gives her specifics. Because Ryan, often you'll be at a cocktail or you'll be with some guys golfing, whatever, and they'll say, what about this blah, blah, blah stock? Well, if the person doesn't have a clue what they own, they look like a jerk. So it's nice to know what you own. And so he's given her this information so that when she's at a cocktail, she doesn't stand there like, well, I don't know, somebody's like, and
Yeah.
so then they were just about to talk about families and the weather, at which point in time I piped in and I said, wow, that was an amazing interaction because that was a trusted advisor doing his best work and being exceptionally professional and communicating so to give his client that whole level of confidence. So that's why I say confidence and independence in hand.
Yeah, almost interchangeable. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
powerful. So really, it's a knowing. It's a deeper knowing of what your finances are doing. Right, is really what that means beyond the numbers. That was a powerful answer. When I worked for this restaurant company, I would go on and I'd talk about the new special that we had or whatever. And I remember everybody would always tell me, "Don't interrupt the newscaster." And I'm like, me? Why are you saying that? They're like, you interrupt everybody. So apparently it's been a habit for most of my life. So, for someone who's listening to this, and they haven't really begun doing this work, maybe they haven't even thought about what wealth management looks like to them, or, they're a woman who is just beginning to think about these things. What small but powerful shift can she make to feel more resourced without adding more responsibilities or more to her plate?
Well, own it. First of all, own it. Like step up to it and say, I'm going to make this a priority. And I'm going to find a wealth advisor. Now, if you don't have enough money that you think you are worthy of a wealth advisor, then everybody has a banking relationship, and banking systems have different levels of support depending on the amount of wealth that you have. So that's always a good place to start out. A lot of AI is kicking in now just as you're getting started. So that's a good opportunity, but we have all been told we're still human beings. So don't let AI take over. You still have to be knowledgeable about what in the world is going on and what is important for you to do in order to put that plan together and to move forward. I'm a certified financial planner, and CFPs are in North America. I don't know about globally. But what you can do is just Google CFP near me, and up will come 2 or 3 names and check them out. What do you think of this one? Are they close to me? Whatever. Book an appointment. And if they say you don't have enough money to invest with me, ask them, who would you recommend that I start with? Often, too, people will be working with an advisor. So fast forward, you've got a plan in place, but now you want to do different things and you're really feeling that this wealth advisor with whom you've been working is not meeting your needs. Sometimes people outgrow their advisors. So always know it is you that is choosing that wealth advisor to help you, not the other way around. So again, we're back to the whole worthy comment. You're worthy of stepping up and stepping out and finding that great resource to work with you.
So own it and really, I
Own
hear
it.
you saying start by starting, right?
Right.
And if there's not a wealth advisor, then go start something at the bank. And
Right.
if you're not sure, Google CFP near
CFP.
me, talk to somebody.
Right. Right.
And just get the ball moving, because I think what I really hear, and I think the power behind this message, is because you are worth it now. No, you don't have to do anything to get that worth. You're worth it now. And I think that's at the heart of this, I think that's something we locked on at the very beginnings.
Yep. And let me just say one more thing. Often, if you're working for a company and you've got a pension plan there and a benefits plan, you think that's enough. You think you're covered. But the other thing, nobody wants to buy insurance. People feel that's just, I'm not going to go to somebody because they're going to try to sell me some insurance. I don't want any insurance. Okay, well, guess what? The day after something happens is too late to realize you should have had insurance. So that's why you need to educate yourself on how this all fits in. Because if you've got a pension plan with your company and you've got a benefits plan that will cover, disability or whatever if you're off for a couple of months, but now you're going to be off longer, you may have to start drawing down from your 401k to cover your income because you didn't have insurance to cover you in that scenario. So all you're doing is working with someone who will say, what about this? What about that one? And they'll give you all sorts of options. And then you choose one that you feel comfortable with and understand why you own it.
Yeah. Beautifully said. So Nancy, as you work towards this mission of creating more female leaders in the world, what's the next step on your mission? I know you said you're sort of working on it, but is there anything on the radar?
Well, I consulted with 4 women leaders who have done a significant amount themselves, but are leading organizations that are reflective on the past. And I said, I want this flipped. Like, how do we flip it? And how I was calling it, they said that was wrong, so we're still working it up, is Women's Age of Integrity. If you look at what the word integrity means, it's kind of the best of the best. So if we want more women leaders in roles to help the world be the best of the best, what do we need to do? Where are those opportunities? And so, that was kind of a first step. I'm still working on it with a couple of others. And who knows where it will end. But the day after Trump was inaugurated, there was a service at the Episcopal Church in Washington. And the minister is Reverend Marianne Budd, and she's written a book called How We Learn to Be Brave. And remember how she was telling Trump to have mercy. And then she's just recently added on to it how young people learn to be brave. It's incredible. So, this is what I would love to see more women doing, is just stepping out and stepping up and taking the lead and finding a way to make the world a better place in their own unique way.
So if someone was listening right now and it was a young woman feeling called to be bold, but she felt resistance, as the world sort of, brings down upon us, what might you say to her?
Well, another thing to Google is tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah.
And, her boldness may have been exactly that she stepped out and other people are trying to cut her down. Just back out and redirect. Like, don't let them put the run on you. Really don't. Like, if you've got goodness to add and you feel that that it's something more right than wrong, obviously be respectful and be introspective. But at the same time, don't stop. Like, don't let them put the run on you and send you into the back seat. Keep going. We used to say, go bold or go home. Now it's go bold, be bold and keep going.
Yeah. I love that. Looking back over your work, what gives you the deepest sense of fulfillment today?
Well, I consider myself to be a connector and an influencer. So any opportunity I have to make that happen is great. Recently, there were 2 organizations, very similar missions, one just starting out, the other one wanting to unwind after 15 years, and they would be natural competitors. And so I connected them to one another, and I said, come along when we least expect them. But one's ramping up, the other one wants to phase out. If you're selling a company, you never get everything you want. If you're buying a company, you always feel you're paying too much. And all I said was just keep talking. Like, don't throw in the towel too soon, because the work that you're both doing is kind of limited. Like, how many buyers are really going to be interested? And how long do you want to work hard to get this launched? And so my hope is that they will keep talking. And the best thing that could happen is that they end up being matched up. I've had different successes in different ways, not right off the bat. I mean, sometimes it's a stretch. So sometimes you have to keep on convincing one party or the other why they need to keep going. And then inevitably it all works. And sometimes it doesn't. Invest whatever you can. And if it's not working, then give it up. Go focus on somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So you had mentioned this earlier, and I'd be silly if I didn't ask you this in the Personal Success podcast, but how do you define success for Nancy now?
Well, as I mentioned, give more than you take. And I always like being the catalyst. I never like to be the person that's front and center. I don't like to be on the main stage. I like to see those opportunities and try to match them up. And the leadership comment that I made happened to me last year. I was leading an organization. I've got this whole team of directors that are under me. And that was the approach that I took, was how can I help them maximize their role in the role that they're in? And then out of the blue, I won a leadership award at the end of the year. I wasn't working to get it, but and I haven't spoken with the people who decided what I had done that they thought was so worthy to give me that award. But it just kind of reinforced that my intuition was right. Don't try to be the star for everything and everyone. Help other people be the star.
Yeah. I think we need a greater understanding of that in the world, right? Help other people be right there. There's built-in trust there. There's built-in support for the people who need it. And there's a built-in sense of fulfillment and success for you. I mean, it just is, when you break it down that way, it's like, why would we think anything else?
And then we're all in this together.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. I think it's so easy to forget. It's so easy for us to forget. So Nancy, if someone is interested in your program and working with you in women, worth, and wealth, how might they reach out to you?
Just send me an email and ask me a question or give me a whatever. And it's Nancy at womenworthwellness.com. Nancy at womenworthwellness.com. And also you'll go into our database. So whenever we figure out what we're doing next, our database will know as we're on all the social media as well.
Great. That's great. And that will be in the show notes too. We'll have that in the website and all that stuff in there.
Well, one person did ask me, a couple of times people ask you questions that are real showstoppers. One was, would you define an accomplished woman today the same way you did 20 or 30 years ago? And I said, no, because an accomplished woman to me today is that one who does take it to the next level. The other one was, what would you like to see Women, Worth, and Wellness doing 30 years from now? Like you've been at it for 31 years, so 30 years from now. And I said, I would hope that this brand has interspersed into a wealth organization so that all those wealth advisors know how to work with women exceptionally well, given they're the ones that are going to have lots of money, but really focus on their health as an equal partner to their wealth. And then, of course, the whole philanthropic focus. What do you care about? And if you care about women's health, then it's a holistic brand. Circle right back to the very beginning.
Yeah. What a powerful vision, and I really appreciate how much you've thought about the work you're doing and how much that you've thought about how it's going to impact, the world at large. I think that's the consideration, it's just, yes, it is about women and empowering women with worth and wealth, but it's also the impact that that's going to make. Right? It really has to do with just, sort of elevating people's sense of worth and life and therefore their capacity and capability. And it just is it's a beautiful thing. And I appreciate how much thought you've put into what you're doing.
Thank you. I spoke with my virtual assistant yesterday and I said, I'll tell you what our number one word is for 2026. And that is amplify.
Yes.
So.
Well, incredible.
And that's all come from this whole podcasting experience because you see that the brand is stronger than ever all over the world. Amazing. Yeah. So let's keep it going. Anyway, Ryan, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And I wish you the best in the future. And hopefully we'll get to talk again about your next big project.
Perfect. Anytime. Keep in touch.
All right. Certainly will.
Okay. One thing, I'll just say one brief thing that I was thinking. You're the oldest of 6 boys. I'm the youngest of 4. And I've got 2 older sisters and an older brother. But when you're the youngest, you very, very simply ever get any attention because it's on everybody else. And so the way I would get attention is to have one-liners. Like you had to be funny and you had to be funny and quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
I can
interesting
imagine that.
to see the
Yeah.
difference. Anyway,
absolutely.
interesting.
Yeah, it certainly is. Nancy, it's a great conversation. I appreciate your wisdom and your insight and your mission.
Thank you. My pleasure. And keep up the good work. All your good work. So important.
Thank you. Conversation resonated with you. I hope one thing lands very clearly, that worth is not something you earn after you prove you're enough. It's something you begin from. In this episode, Nancy Lynn Griffin reminded us that leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about becoming more of who you were meant to be, using your voice, your resources, and your courage to create a better future for others. We talk about women, worth, wealth, wellness, legacy, and the kind of leadership that multiplies itself by helping others rise. So if you're a woman who has been playing small, deferring your own needs, or waiting for permission to step forward, let this be a reminder that you are already worthy of support, clarity, and a life that reflects your full value. And if you're someone raising children, leading teams, or building a family, or shaping culture in any way, this conversation is a reminder that the world gets better when more women lead with strength, wisdom, and integrity. A huge thank you to Nancy Lynn Griffin for joining us and for the work she continues to do through Women, Worth, and Wellness. Now, you can learn more about Nancy and her work at Women, Worth, and Wellness website, the membership community. You can access that link in the show notes here. And you can also reach out directly at nancy@womenworthwellness.com. You can connect with her on LinkedIn, follow Women, Worth, and Wellness on LinkedIn, and find the brand on Instagram as well. And these are listed publicly and in the show notes again. And again, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you subscribe to the Personal Success Podcast and share it with someone who needs it who will make a difference with. And if you got the time, I want to request that you leave a review or a comment. It really helps people find this material and helps spread our message. Keep moving towards a life that is asking more of you. Thanks for listening.